She leaned back on the couch in our Atlanta apartment, phone in her hand, and laughed right in my face while a man's voice played through the speaker. Flirty, familiar, unbothered. Then she looked me dead in my eyes and said, "You really thought I was faithful to you? That's adorable." I felt my stomach drop. I told her I was done. She laughed harder and called me soft, like my pain was a comedy special. I stood there numb, hearing my heartbeat in my ears, realizing the person I loved enjoyed humiliating me. Here's how it happened. I'm Liam, young man, born and raised on the south side of Atlanta, the kind who believes love is action, showing up, paying your share, and keeping your word. I met Nia at a friend's cookout in Decatur, where the grill smoke clung to everybody's clothes and the Andes ran the playlist like they owned the city. She laughed at my corny jokes and stole my plate like she'd known me forever. That night felt easy, like my life had been waiting for her to walk into it. Our first date was at a little spot near Ponce City Market. Nothing fancy, just food that made you close your eyes on the first bite. Nia wore a yellow sundress and had this habit of leaning in when she listened, like your words mattered. I tried to be smooth and asked, "You always steal plates?" She said, "Only for men who look like they can afford it." I almost choked laughing. When the check came, she snatched it and said, "Don't get used to being a gentleman." That was the first romantic thing, her pretending she wasn't soft. Back then, I was working long hours, building stability. Nia told me she loved how solid I was. I took that as a compliment. We did regular couple stuff, late-night Waffle House runs, arguing over whether the fries should be extra crispy, dancing in the kitchen while the rice burned. One night, she played an old slow jam and pulled me close, cheek to cheek, whispering, "You feel like home." I believed her. I believed love meant you could relax. I didn't realize I was relaxing inside someone else's storm. I proposed in Savannah on River Street after we ate shrimp so good we didn't speak for 10 minutes. I had the ring hidden in my jacket like a nervous teenager. When I got down on one knee, she screamed so loud tourists turned around. Then she cried and laughed at the same time, smudging mascara across her cheeks. She said yes and kissed me like she meant it. Later in the hotel, she held my face and said, "I'm yours." I thought that was the start of forever. It was the start of my blind spot. Marriage started sweet, then got complicated. Nia's family became our weekend routine. Her mom in College Park, her aunties in Stone Mountain, cousins spilling into the living room like a parade. I played spades like my reputation depended on it. I lost on purpose, sometimes just to keep the peace. Nia would smile at me across the table, and I'd feel proud. But then the little jabs started. "You too sensitive. You always overthink." Small words, repeated, turn into a cage. I didn't know it yet, but she was training me not to protest. The humiliation wasn't immediate. It grew like mold. She'd correct me in front of people, loud enough to embarrass me. If I told a story, she'd cut in. "That's not even how it happened." If I cracked a joke, she'd roll her eyes like I was desperate. Once at her cousin's birthday in Lithonia, she said, "Liam tries so hard to be funny. Bless him." Everybody laughed. I laughed too, because what else do you do when the person you love turns you into a punchline? Later I told her it hurt. She said, "Stop being dramatic." I started catching little signs that didn't add up. She guarded her phone like it held state secrets. She'd step outside to take a quick call and come back smiling like she'd just gotten good news. One night, she came home smelling like cologne that wasn't mine. When I asked about it, she looked at me like I was crazy and said, "Maybe you're imagining things." The gaslighting was smooth. I began doubting my own instincts. I hated that version of me, quiet, apologizing for asking normal questions. Meanwhile, I was still trying to be romantic, trying to fix a problem she wouldn't admit existed. I planned a date night in Midtown, nice restaurant, candles, reservations. I even watched those corny couples communication videos. Nia showed up late, scrolled her phone through dinner, and took a selfie in the bathroom longer than she spoke to me. When I reached for her hand, she pulled away like my touch annoyed her. I forced a smile and said, "You okay?" She said, "I'm fine. You're the one acting weird." That's the night I went home and stared at the ceiling until morning. The funny scenes were still there, but they started feeling like commercials between disasters. Like the day our smoke alarm wouldn't stop beeping and Nia yelled, "It's the devil," while I stood on a chair with a broom, swinging like I was in an action movie. Or when I tried cooking brunch and almost set the toaster on fire. She laughed so hard she snorted, then called her friends to tell them I was a hazard. I laughed with her because laughter was safer than arguing. But even in the jokes, she had this edge, like she enjoyed making me look small. At work, I was the opposite of small. I kept moving up, not flashy, just steady, new responsibilities, more pay, more respect. I thought that would make our home life easier. Instead, Nia started acting like my success belonged to her. She'd say, "Must be nice," when I talked about a good day. She didn't celebrate me. She audited me. The more I achieved, the more she acted like I owed her, like she deserved a reward for tolerating me. That's when I started feeling lonely inside my own marriage, like I was sleeping next to a stranger who used my name. The betrayal became impossible to ignore the night I walked into our apartment and heard her laughing in the bedroom. Low, intimate laughter. I froze in the hallway, key still in my hand. When I pushed the door open, she wasn't alone, but not the way you're thinking. She had her friend Tasha in there, and they both looked up like I was interrupting. Tasha smirked and said, "Girl, tell him what you told me." Nia shrugged and said, "I said what I said." My stomach tightened. I asked, "Tell me what?" Nia smiled like a villain and said, "That you wouldn't leave even if you knew." I tried to stay calm. I asked for honesty. Nia acted bored. Then her phone lit up, and she didn't realize I could see the name, a man I didn't know. When she noticed my eyes, she turned the screen away too late. I whispered, "Who is that?" She laughed and said, "You want to know so bad, huh?" Tasha laughed too, like we were all in on a joke. I felt my face burn. I wasn't just being cheated on. I was being mocked publicly by people I trusted in my own home. My chest felt like it was caving in. I told Nia, "I'm not doing this." She leaned back on the bed and said, "You always say that." Then she hit play on a voice note. A man's voice, flirtatious and confident. "Tell your husband good night for me." Nia laughed like it was the funniest thing she'd ever heard. I stood there shaking. I said, "I'm done." She laughed harder and said, "With what money? With what backbone? You'll be back by tomorrow. You like being my little provider." Tasha giggled like she was watching reality TV. That night, I slept in my car in a grocery store parking lot in Sandy Springs. I didn't want to go home. My hands were on the steering wheel, and I couldn't stop replaying her laughter. I kept thinking about our wedding day and how she looked at me then. I kept trying to find the moment she stopped respecting me. I cried until my throat hurt. It wasn't just heartbreak. It was humiliation. I felt stupid for loving her. I felt stupid for trusting her. And the worst part was realizing she wasn't confused. She wasn't sorry. She was enjoying it. The next day, I went to work pretending I was fine. I answered emails, went to meetings, nodded at jokes like my life wasn't on fire. During lunch, I sat in my car and stared at my hands. My friend Marcus called and said, "You sound off." I wanted to lie, but I couldn't. I told him everything, and he got quiet. Then he said, "Don't argue with disrespect. Move smart." He didn't tell me to fight, didn't tell me to beg. He told me to protect myself. That was the first lifeline. Not comfort, direction. I drove to Marietta and met with an attorney in a plain office building that smelled like printer paper and coffee. The lawyer, Ms. Denise Carter, was calm in a way that made me feel less crazy. I told her about the cheating, the humiliation, the financial stuff. She didn't gasp or judge. She just asked questions and took notes. She said, "Liam, we deal in facts and paperwork. Let her talk. You document." When she said it, something in me unclenched. I didn't need to win an argument. I needed to exit a trap. I started moving in silence. Not petty, not dramatic, surgical. I opened a new account at a credit union in Smyrna. I switched my direct deposit. I froze my credit. I changed passwords, email, banking, phone plan, everything. I downloaded statements and screenshots. I made copies of bills and proof of payments. Every time I felt my emotions rise, I forced myself to do one practical thing. It was like building a wall brick by brick. I didn't feel powerful. I felt terrified, but I kept moving because staying meant dying slowly. Meanwhile, Nia acted like nothing happened, except she treated me worse. She posted cute selfies, laughed loud on FaceTime, walked through the apartment like she owned the air. She'd say things like, "Why you quiet? You mad?" And then she'd laugh before I could answer. One night, she made a plate of food and put it in front of me like she was generous. Then she said, "Look at you. I still feed you even when you act like a little girl." I stared at the food and felt my stomach twist. I realized she wasn't just cheating, she was trying to break my identity. The funniest moment during all this came from pure exhaustion. She asked me to help carrying groceries, and I grabbed the biggest bag like I was trying to bench press my feelings. The bottom tore and oranges rolled everywhere. Nia laughed, Tasha laughed on speaker, and Nia said, "Even the groceries don't respect you." I wanted to scream, but I surprised myself. I laughed too. Not because it was funny, but because it was so absurd. I leaned down, picked up oranges, and thought this is what my life became. A man collecting disrespect off the floor. I found a small rental in Charlotte, North Carolina, through a coworker who knew a landlord. Nothing fancy, just clean, quiet, and mine. The first night there, I ate takeout sitting on the floor. No TV, no couch, just silence. At first, the silence was loud. It became medicine. I slept 8 hours straight for the first time in weeks. In the morning, I made coffee and didn't feel dread. I felt grief, yes, but also relief. Like I'd stepped out of a storm and realized my body had been bracing the whole time. I left the divorce papers on the kitchen counter back in Atlanta. No speech, no note, just the truth. I wasn't there when she saw them, but I could picture it. Her smirk fading, her control slipping. My phone started exploding. First call, laughter. "You didn't do this." Second call, anger. "You really trying to embarrass me?" Third call, venom. "You ain't going nowhere. You need me." She never asked why I was hurting. She never apologized. She only cared that her supply was threatened. That told me everything I needed to know about who I married. The locked account was the part she didn't believe would happen. She tried the card, declined. Tried again, declined. She called me screaming, "What did you do?" I said, calm as I could, "I protected myself." She said, "You're broke without me." I almost laughed because the math didn't match her confidence. She was the one spending like money grew on trees. She was the one treating my paycheck like a community fund for her disrespect. When she realized I wasn't backing down, she got crueler, not softer. "No woman wants a weak man," she spat. I said, "Good. I'm not shopping." Her karma didn't come as a movie scene. It came as consequences stacking up, quietly, with receipts. The car payment bounced. The phone line got suspended because I removed my authorization. The lease renewal didn't happen because my name wasn't staying on it. The little lifestyle she curated, nails, brunch, spontaneous shopping, ran into reality. She called her boyfriend, the one with the voice note. He didn't show up. He didn't send money. He didn't rescue her. He vanished like smoke. That's how you learn who someone is, not when they're winning, but when their winnings stop. I still had moments where I missed the good version of her, the one from Savannah, the one who danced in the kitchen. Grief is messy like that. In Raleigh, where I started traveling for work, I'd see couples holding hands and feel a sting. Sometimes I'd laugh at a memory and then immediately feel stupid for laughing. But I kept my promise to myself. No revenge dating, no posting online, no messy texts. I went to the gym, focused on sleep, ate better, saved money. My life became quiet routines that stitched me back together. Healing didn't feel like fireworks. It felt like getting my appetite back. There was a romantic moment, small, private, and real, that surprised me. My neighbor in Charlotte, Ariel, an older black woman with a sharp tongue and warm eyes, knocked on my door one evening holding a plate. "You look like you've been living off sorrow and caffeine," she said. "Eat." I laughed genuinely. We sat on my bare couch later and watched a silly game show, roasting the contestants. Nothing happened between us. No flirting, no drama, but there was tenderness in being cared for without strings. It reminded me love doesn't have to be a battlefield. Sometimes love is a plate of food and somebody minding your humanity. Nia kept trying to shame me back into her control. She'd text insults at random hours. "You always been lame. You think you better than me. You can't do life without me. Then she'd switch to threats. I'll ruin you. She never once said sorry. She never once said, I hurt you. She only escalated. Ms. Carter told me, let her show who she is in writing. So I stopped responding. I saved everything. And every time her anger popped up on my screen, I reminded myself, this isn't love trying to return. This is control trying to survive. The court date came 6 months later in Atlanta. I walked in wearing a plain suit, not to impress anyone, just to respect myself. Nia walked in like she was late to a party she didn't want to attend. Attitude first, truth last. She looked at me with contempt, not regret. In the hallway, she leaned close and whispered, you think you did something? You still ain't nothing. I looked at her and felt nothing. No rage, no longing, just clarity. That's a weird kind of victory, when the person who broke you can't reach you anymore because you rebuilt your boundaries where they can't touch. Inside the courtroom, the judge didn't care about her smirks or my silence. The judge cared about documents, dates, proof. The bank records showed patterns. The statements showed who paid what. The timeline showed the damage. Nia tried to twist the story, but she couldn't twist paperwork. When a ruling came down, it wasn't dramatic. It was firm. She didn't get rewarded for betrayal. She didn't get a bonus for humiliation. She walked out angry, still unremorseful, still convinced she was the victim. Karma wasn't her crying in my arms. Karma was her facing life without the cushion she abused. My comeback wasn't public. No viral post. No speeches. No look at me now. I went back to my quiet place and kept building. I took a better role, stacked savings, and set up my life so it couldn't be hijacked again. Sometimes I still remember her laughter, and I won't pretend it doesn't sting, but it no longer defines me. The moral lesson is simple and hard. Love without respect is a slow robbery. If someone humiliates you and feels no remorse, don't negotiate your dignity. Move smart, protect your peace, and let consequences teach what your heart couldn't. If you enjoyed this story, please like, comment, and share this video with your friends. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a powerful story drop.